$1,375 is the cost of this boot, which is crazy for basically any boot, because we've cut apart some of the highest quality boots in the world, and they top the scales at maybe $700. So this boot is definitely in that more designer product range, where a lot of times you're just paying for the name and you're literally just paying for the price tag. A lot of times with these designer style products, the actual product you get is not even close to being the highest quality you can get. Or is this a rare full veg tan boot made by a company that can trace its history and lineage back to the 1800s? We're gonna cut it in half and find out, run it through our test to really see, is this just a ridiculously overpriced designer boot, or is this actually somehow worth $1,300? And it sounds like it's a pretty cool history, because based off their website, there's not a whole lot of information about this tannery. So we're just gonna kind of go through what they say on their website. And it all started in the 1800s when the Guidi Rosselini tannery was founded in 1896, when Guidi and Giovanni Rosselini and Gino Ulivi partnered with a joint stock of 75,000 Italian lire and officially established this company in tannery. And then a few decades later, Giovanni Rosselini died on October 23rd of 1923, and his shares of the company were taken by his other partners, and they renamed the brand Successori di Guidi Rosselini. Then in 1934, the tannery was enlarged with the purchase of an adjoining building owned by Gino Ulivi for 95,000 Italian lires. And this historical tannery, Guidi Rosselini, has been producing handmade shoes since 1896. The same processes and techniques have been used for over 125 years, and Guidi Rosselini has interpreted these timeless values and artistry in a contemporary key. So that's what they say on their website, but there's really not a ton more information on the internet about this tannery, but it sounds like, to me, sorting through all the Italian words and names that I butchered, they've been in a tannery for basically since the end of the 1800s, been making some of the highest quality leather in the world, and from that leather, they've been making their own footwear. You ever wondered where I got such a nice chair as a leather worker? Now, the problem is, every time we get a sponsor from FlexiSpot, everyone else steals a chair except for me, and now I'm stuck with this crumbly old fake leather chair. It's not supportive in any way, it's not comfortable, and I hate it. And so when FlexiSpot's like, hey, we got a chair for you. We saw your chair in that video. Here's a C7 for you. So let me show you the C7. This is the C7. And just right off the bat, you tell me what looks more professional. But honestly, the biggest difference between these two is just the comfort, and especially the breathability and the adjustability of this thing. It has a self-adaptive dynamic system. This lumbar support cushion detects subtle changes in your posture and automatically adjusts itself. It's super adjustable. You got about every option. There's like 3 levers underneath here, so it's hard to remember which one does what. Obviously up and down. There we go. Unlock that. You can adjust how much pressure you have on that back sway. The armrests slide back and forth. You can raise them and lower them. It's a big old wide seat too. It's 20 inches, so plenty of room for you to sit on. It fits anyone from 5'4" to 6'2", but I'm 6'4", it fits me fine. The coolest thing is you can attach a hammock underneath your FlexiSpot desk, so you can put your feet up, and it just looks good. You know, this is the mostly black version. There's also a bunch of vibrant colors, so you can match your chair to your room or your personal tastes. They're made for sitting for long periods of time, whether you're a freelancer, finance bro, IT specialist, editor, manager. So that's why I'm finally getting my own chair. And you can get $30 off your purchase by using the link in the description and using the code C730. And so thanks again to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. Check out FlexiSpot below. So what is this boot? Well, the brand is Guidi Rosselini. The style is the Guido 1918. They weigh 2 pounds, 7 ounces. They retail for 1,285 euros, which is roughly 1,375 USD. They're made in Italy pretty clearly. And the way they position this product is Guidi Rosselini objects are named after some ancestors of the designer who created them. The name of the model contains the name of the ancestor and its year of birth. The precious leather used to craft Guido 1918 can present veins, scratches, imperfections, or grain differences. These characteristics should not be considered as defects, but the result of a vegetable tanning without varnishing, which, instead of covering the leather, is aimed at exalting its natural flower. I think there's some mistranslations going on, maybe. Distinctive traits such as these give the object a unique character. The skin, the color, and the leather, and the peculiarities which change with use and will evolve with the owner. And I think this pattern is based off of one of the really old patterns, because it is a wild looking design. You know, initially I just did not like it, but after a while learning it was an old pattern. It grew on me a little bit, but it is very distinct and different. And if you want a pair of these, be sure to check them out via links in my description. So now that all the Italian stuff is done, what do you actually get for a boot that's $1,300? Is this just that designer price tag without any of the substance and materials to back it up? Or is this a boot built to the absolute best standard and quality from a small batch that they can't really afford to charge anything less than $1,300? Well, if we start looking at the materials, this leather is a really nice leather. It's a vegetable tan leather. There's not a ton of information on their website about really anything about about it, except for it being veg tan. And the smell of it, the color of it, the cross section all points to it being a veg tan leather because it's that bright tan color and has that vegetable tan smell. If you don't know, there's basically two types of tanning when it comes to leather. There's your vegetable tan and there's chrome tan. Chrome tanning uses chromium salts, which quickly chemically convert skin into leather so it doesn't rot. It's a faster process, it's easier to do, it can be done at a bigger scale, and it makes a leather that's a lot more soft, it's a lot more supple, it's easier to pack a lot of oils and conditioners into it. It can be more durable than veg tan in certain situations. Veg tan, on the other hand, instead of using chromium salts, they use natural vegetable tannins, hence the name veg tan, from a lot from tree barks and other naturally derived chemicals, but especially tree barks. But since these aren't industrial grade chemicals, it takes a significantly longer time to turn that flesh into leather. And in my opinion, vegetable tan leather, it looks better, it ages better, it smells better, it's a lot more natural, it has a lot more depth of color as you start developing that patina with the use and the age of the boots. It develops a lot richer and deeper patina compared to chrome tan leather, and it's harder and a lot more durable in certain ways. Basically, all leather in history was veg tan up until the 1840s when chrome tanning was invented. So it's a lot more traditional way of tanning leather, and it can be a lot harder and stiffer, but also more brittle at the same time than chrome tanning. So how good is this veg tan? Well, it's about 2 millimeters thick, has lots of grain in it. Put the macro lens on it, and it's a very, very aniline finish. There's not a lot of pigment on top, maybe just a little teeny bit to even out some of the color. But because it's so natural, you can see that even just in the B-roll that we went and got, you can see the little raindrops discolored the leather already. And so if you're wanting a boot that's not gonna change color at all, veg tan is what you want to avoid. If you want really rich patina and it changes within the next few weeks, the first few weeks of wearing them, that's why people love veg tan. And so for me, a leather nerd, I love the idea of a full veg tan boot because it does have that unique property of aging and patinaing to your individual life and your style, what you do, the conditioners you put on, even down to the climate that you're in and the humidity in the air can change how this leather reacts. It's basically a blank canvas. You know, it'll never look the same from the moment you put them on, and it only gets better with age, which I love. But not everybody wants that. Some people just want the boots to stay exactly the same through the entire lifetime, more like the sneaker world. So for me, I really like this veg. I think it's a really good leather. Is it worth basically twice the price of other boots that seem to be similarly built just because of the leather? I don't think so. You know, it's clearly a nice leather, but that's not gonna make it twice the price. But what about the inside? If we start looking here, it's also veg tan lined, and it's about 1.4 millimeters thick. So that makes the overall thickness of this leather somewhere around 3.5 millimeters. So it is gonna be a really hardy and heavy duty boot with that lining. They also give you some more dubbin wax, which will really change the color. I wonder if I should just do this right now and show you how much it actually changes. Watch this. Anytime you're putting any conditioner on a boot, you always want to take just a little bit and try it on a little area that you don't mind it discoloring. Usually I put it back here on the heel stay because I end up wearing out the heels anyway. So let's see how much that changes as we talk about the lining again. So yeah, I love the fact that it's a vegetable tan lining, so you get all those benefits once again. So it's gonna age, and honestly, the inside a lot of these boots that are really high quality are some of the most beautiful parts when it comes to the patina. But because it's a veg tan, it does absorb all your sweat. It's gonna develop a really dark color over time. It's not gonna smell nearly as bad as basically any other synthetic, but even less stink than a chrome tan leather. Because all those natural tannins and that bark that's infused into the leather, it has all those anti-smell properties similar to why people love leather sandals, where your bare feet are on it all day, and they don't really stink nearly as bad as like a cheap pair of sandals. Same concept. Then if you look even deeper on the inside, you can see it's a full veg tan insole. And this is where a lot of times you see veg tan leather in really high-end boots, because veg tan might not be the strongest when it comes to a thinner thickness, especially where high wear spots are. It's a little bit more brittle. But when it comes to insoles, you almost only see veg tan because of how strong it is, because of how rigid it is, and it compresses over time so that you get that footprint in the inside of your boot, like you put your hand in concrete. Same idea. And even more smell resistance, and it absorbs your sweat, has all those benefits we've talked about. So that's why you see it basically in every high-end boot. You rarely ever see anything but a full grain vegetable tan leather insole, unless you're going for something super comfortable. But one thing I don't love is that there's a bunch of nails going down into the heel. And that's obviously to help keep the heel stack on. Usually you see them driven up from the bottom in clinch nails that clinch it all together. Then you have a sock liner. So that could easily be fixed. So I just put a sock liner on there, because the fear would be that as you wear them, one of those nails might pop up just a little bit, and you probably won't ever feel it, or it's not gonna hurt, and you can always hammer it back down, but it could snag one of your socks, and that could easily be fixed with just a half sock liner. And then if we start looking at the other materials, look at the midsole. Once again, it's another big chunk of veg tan. The whole heel stack is veg tan. And obviously you got a rubber outsole, but it's this really unique Vibram outsole that I'm not sure we've seen yet, because it's kind of in between the V100, it's a really heavy, aggressive, like logging outsole, and the shallower mini lug that we put on like the Drifter collaboration. This kind of sits in between. You got a lot more lug. The lugs are 3.5 millimeters deep, and they don't go all the way to the side of the boot, which makes this a lot more of a discreet looking grippy boot, because from the side it just looks like a regular flat sole, but in all reality you've got some pretty aggressive lugs. So I really like that outsole. And as for how this boot is constructed, it looks like it's a Goodyear Welt, and that should be for this price range. If it's glued, then this is a complete travesty. But one way you can check to see if it is Goodyear welted is just slightly pull away the upper from the welt, and if you see little divots and little stitches going in, that's a good chance it's Goodyear welted. Otherwise you just see glue and a hard seam that you can't really pull apart a little bit. I look at it, I see the stitching, so it's clearly Goodyear welted. And now, a little update on the back here, you can see, I'll put it a little bit closer. You can see that one side I put the conditioner on has already darkened it quite a bit. This outsole is pretty hard too. It's a 90 Shore A. You can see it's sewn all the way from the welt all the way through the outsole, so you have a little bit extra security there from preventing delamination. We did the puncture test on it and it had a pretty solid score. That leads me to think that there's probably even more leather on the inside, because so far every piece of leather is veg tan. The only thing I have a little bit question about is the welt, because see how this is like a little bit more of like a darker green hue? This might be a chrome tan welt. Because if you didn't know, chrome tan leather, that chromium salt turns hides into a baby blue color. It's kind of crazy how bright they are. And then from there, tanneries re-tan it, they dye it, they put more conditioners in the inside, and they can bleach out some of the blue. But a lot of times it's impossible to get all that blue hue out of the leather. And so if you were to re-tan it in a more vegetable tanning compounds with those tannins that give you this more like tan color, that blue plus the tan ends up making a light green. And I'm wondering if that's exactly what this is. So besides that, it looks like every single component, including the laces, are vegetable tan, but we don't know, so let's cut it in half. I know you might have forgotten to get your dad something for Father's Day, but that's why we do our 25% off least favorite child Father's Day sale, so you can start crawling your way out of the least favorite spot by getting him a nice handmade leather good at 25% off. There's no way it's gonna get to him on time because it's like tomorrow, but we will give you a little apology letter download you can print off and give to him until he gets his product, so check him out below. All right, we got it cut in half. So let's see if this thing is just 100% vegetable tan leather, which would be pretty wild. So let's see what's inside. So is it all veg tan on the inside? Well, it sure looks like it because you've got that really thick leather insole. Underneath, where you usually just have cork filling or no filling at all, you've got an entire strip of more vegetable tan leather. You've got that steel shank. You can see it's not a cheap gemming like you see in more like the Red Wing price range boots where they take that leather insole, attach a canvas gemming and some fiberboard to it, and then that's what's sewn to the Goodyear welt. So you're actually sewing that Goodyear welt through the leather into more leather in the insole. And now that we've got it cut in half, we can see the cross section of the welt. It still looks like it might be chrome tanned. I'm not 100% sure of that, so I wouldn't say definitively it's chrome tanned. It's at bare minimum it's a chrome veg retan, but it could be either. Ultimately, the reason they would use a chrome tan leather for a welt is because it's a little more flexible, it's less brittle, it's less stiff, and so for a strip of leather that has to make complex curves and bend around a pretty short area, chrome tan leather might make more sense, but we don't know if it's chrome tan. So now that we know every single layer, this might be the most veg tan boot I've ever seen. You know, every single layer is basically veg tan. There's some rubber in there, there's a canvas in between a couple layers to prevent some squeak, but other than that, this thing is basically 100% veg tan leather. And obviously as a leather nerd, I love the veg tan and I like this idea of a complete veg tan boot, but does that mean it's worth $1,300? It doesn't seem like it. You know, it's got a cool shape, it's got a cool history, it's got really high quality leather, veg tan all the way through. It's built pretty well. There's a few little issues I think they could change with that sock liner and maybe that welt if it is chrome tanned. But for the most part, it's a pretty perfect boot. But that doesn't mean it's worth $1,300 because we've seen similar boots made by other brands that are $700-800 that are just as good as this. Does that mean that this much veg tan makes this boot worth twice the price of any other boot? I don't think so. I think it definitely adds a premium to this boot. It's going to be more expensive with this much veg tan. It's going to be more expensive because it's a small brand. I doubt these guys are making hundreds of thousands of boots a year, so they don't get that economy of scale. But I still don't think it's a $1,300 boot. I think it's a pretty aggressive price. So then why do they price it at $1,300? Your guess is as good as mine ultimately. It is a very good boot, so it's not as bad as some designer stuff where they charge an ultra premium, but you're getting a very average result. It is still a very premium boot, but I don't know where they get the $1,300 price range because it is pricey. Why would people buy this? Well, because there are certain people out there that just don't care about the price. They want this really cool old early 1900s pattern on a full veg tan boot made by this Italian tannery, and they're willing to pay an extra $500 just for this cool story and this name. But for the vast majority of people, you can get just as good of a boot for $500 less. And some people just appreciate the art of it and people taking it this far to make it this good, regardless of the price. So even though it's clearly significantly overpriced, it is still a really cool boot. It's a leather purist wet dream. You know, it's like veg tan all the way through. It's gonna patina like crazy. It's just not worth anywhere near $1,300 if you just look at the materials. So ultimately, a pretty cool boot. I thought for sure we'd cut this in half and it'd just be full of garbage and synthetics, but it is built to a pretty high standard of quality, and the boot nerd in me and the leather nerd loves that they took this veg tan concept to the ultimate extreme. And so, you know, I've got these mixed feelings like, holy, it's $1,300. That's way too much money for 99% of people, and you can get something for like half the price. It's just about as good. But then there's also that side of me that's like, but I do love that really cool story and this old pattern, and like that's the fact that it's the most vegetable tan boot that we've ever seen. It's just not worth $1,300. And that's kind of the dichotomy and the fun of this channel that we do, is you're constantly weighing the functionality versus the form, the story versus the practicality, the history versus the utility. It's part of what makes this so complex and so fun, and why each video is interesting and exciting to do for me. So let me know what you guys think, and if there is a more veg tan boot out there, let me know what it is, because it's a pretty cool concept. I like the idea of a complete veg tan boot. How much do you think this should be priced at based off of everything you've seen on the channel? And thank you guys for watching and supporting this channel, the Rose Anvil 2 channel, the handmade leather goods that we make here in the shop from a lot of vegetable tan leather that gives us the expertise to really review these and give you the information that you need to make smart buying decisions, even if you got $1,300 to spend on a vegetable tan leather boot. So thank you guys. See ya. And don't forget to use the exclusive code C730 and get yourself a C7 chair for $30 off via the links in my description. And thanks again to FlexiSpot and Giovanni Rosselini and Gino Ulvi partnered with a, good Lord.